Hey, here we are. Sports Bit, Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy, Wednesday, November 2nd. Big game breakdown. Doesn't get any better than this. Game 7 of the World Series. One drought will come to an end. We'll also get to UCLA and Colorado, the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and the Thunder take on the Clippers. Deep dive, how to bet and beat the NBA. Advice from Teddy covers coming up. Bad for the books. Let's start in Major League Baseball, Teddy. A ton of money to the over money last night in the Cubs game. Flew over, no problem, and Russell hits the grand slam early. All cubbies.
Yeah. Tomlin wasn't ready on 3 days rest. And Addison Russell with the shot heard around the world. Remember, when the Red Sox ended their title drought in 2004, they came back from the brink. They did something nobody's ever done before. They were down 0-3 in the ALCS against the Yankees, and they were facing Mariano Rivera with a 2-run deficit in the ninth inning of Game 4. And they rallied back to win that game. Now, the Cubs not quite as up against it as the Red Sox were, but no teams rallied from a 3-1 deficit in the World Series in 31 years. And even that one, the Royals beating the Cardinals in 1985, was aided by a bad umpire call. The Chicago team feels a little bit different, Pauly, and obviously not a good result for the books. A, with the Cubs continuing to win all that future money on Chicago, and B, last night the over was a disastrous result for houses that cater to baseball bets.
Yeah, the Denkinger call. You're right about that. All right, we're gonna talk about this because Joe Madden was taking a lot of heat. Why bring in Chapman in the 7th inning, and why is he in a 9-2 game?
I cannot speak for that. I can't. Whatever Joe Madden, whatever his excuse is, it doesn't hold validity with me. But then again, who are we to question Joe Madden? Obviously, he's got an idea about what he needs to do to get his team to win the World Series. And let's not forget, all right, that at this stage of the campaign, it's burn everyone's arm out forever. You know what I mean? So, in theory, I understand it, but I'm not going to justify it. You have your best arm out there, but heck, you might need him tonight, fresh, instead of last night in a blowout game. So, I'm not going to.
No kidding. No kidding. The Indians must have been loving that. The only thing I can think of is he has zero confidence in Rondon, and he's going to go Hendricks, Lester, and Lackey. That's the only thing I can think of, that Lester will be ready to go if Hendricks gets in trouble. More on this coming up in Big Game Breakdown. NBA, hey, the T-Wolves get their revenge. They open up a big lead again. This time they extended it, cruised to a blowout win over Memphis.
Yeah, very bad result for the house for, a week 1 NBA game. But a ton of Minnesota money. Well, Coach Fizdale decided to rest Mike Conley and Marc Gasol on the front end of a back-to-back that finishes tonight against New Orleans. Now, they did get Tony Allen back in the lineup for the first time all year. And, of course, Minnesota didn't have Ricky Rubio, which sent Chris Dunn into the starting lineup for the first time this season. But Memphis, they shot 36%. They turned the ball over 22 times. And they were blown off the floor. Minnesota bettors, and there were plenty of them, cashed in last night.
A bad beat. Sacramento, the dreaded overtime game. Miami wins by 12. A horrible possession. Tie game. Sacramento has the ball, and Rudy Gay takes a 3 that was an air ball.
I like that possession because I had to take it on the Heat in my pocket. But, it was a real tough spot for Sacramento. 5th game in 7 nights to open the season. Already the first team in the NBA to play 2 sets of back-to-backs. And the Heat, the Heat really, they tried to give them the game in the 4th quarter. Miami took a number of really bad possessions. They let Sacramento rally back. But the refs also took it back. It was one tough call after the next for Sac, though, including DeMarcus Cousins fouling out on a real questionable offensive foul. And those Kings' legs finally got tired in overtime. The Heat win by 12, laying 3.5-4. Tough beat if you had Sacramento.
But a bad bet. The Magic bet up to 5 at Philly. I don't know how they came back to win that game. They were down big.
Well, they had to rally from 18 down. How they came back to win it was at the very end. The Sixers made a great defensive play on Joel Embiid in a tie game with 2 seconds left. The deflected ball bounced right to Serge Ibaka under the hoop. Boom. It was a flagrant foul. They ended up winning by a bucket. Did not cover the number. Orlando, in a point spread disaster in early season play, and they still took money last night. That was wrong.
Another bad bet, the Pelicans at home. They have Anthony Davis, and they can't win a damn game. They give up 117 to the Bucks.
Yeah, when you're losing at home to Milwaukee, it tells you very clearly this team should not be favored. The Pelicans took money last night. They're supposed to come out off the schneid, -3 up to -3.5. Anthony Davis or not, New Orleans is not a good team, and superstars can cost you ATS. Stay tuned for the deep dive. We talk about NBA capping 101.
All right, let's get into it. Game 7 of the World Series, maybe the most anticipated Game 7 since '86. The Red Sox and the Mets. LiveOddsSportsBookReview.com. We tape early. Kluber against Hendricks. Kluber's $1.10, 7.5 the total. Kluber's been unflappable. Now his third start on 3 days rest in 20 days. You look at this graphic. The series so far, 12 innings pitched, 1 run, 9 hits, 1 walk, 15 strikeouts. He is 88 and 81 pitches. So fatigue might not be huge here. But Teddy, if he only goes 6, that's okay because Miller is well rested.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing that was good about Cleveland getting blown out last night from Terry Francona's standpoint is that he was able to use the back end of his bullpen. So he's got his key arms ready to go. And as you mentioned, they'll be ready to go if need be by the 4th inning. But the number that stands out to me from that chart from Kluber, 14.1 pitches per inning. He's not dallying around. He's not teasing people. He's going at opposing hitters aggressively. That's what you want from your ace in a Game 7 situation. But you talk about that. Yeah, he's only thrown 88 and 81 pitches in those first 2 starts. But the guy had 215 regular season innings. He's got more than 30 innings here in the postseason. So he's going to go over 250 innings at some point in this ballgame if things break right for Cleveland. And this is not a pitcher with a history of being effective with this much work under his belt.
Hendricks will be fresh, full rest for every playoff start, but all the starts have been in Wrigley. So his first start on the road, the 2016 splits at home, 10-3 with a 1.32, away just 7-6 with a 2.95. In Game 3, only went 4 1/3, 6 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. He dodged a lot of bullets, Teddy.
Yeah, he sure did. And, threw 85 pitches, but 19.6 pitches per inning. That's his second highest of any game all season. And now Cleveland gets another look at him. Of course, we're talking about a guy who's going on normal rest versus a guy who's going now for his third postseason starts in a 20-day span on short rest for Kluber. But we talk about the 2016 season. Kluber was an ace coming in. Hendricks was a guy who came out of absolutely nowhere to be a dominant hurler for Chicago. In a Game 7 situation, you want the Johnny-come-lately, or you want the guy who's been an ace for the last 3 or 4 years for Cleveland? That's the question. But from a momentum standpoint, there's no case you can make for the Cleveland Indians tonight. And that, to me, is very problematic, regardless of the pitching matchup.
I know we're Sports Center for bettors, but what do you think this does from a rating standpoint?
I mean, are you kidding? It's huge.
How big?
Look, the baseball, a Sunday night, the World Series game outdrew the Sunday night NFL, and that hasn't happened.
And it wasn't close.
Yeah, exactly. It was and now that the series is even more dramatic, and what are they going up against? A MAC game and some NBA?
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, it'll be the Fox will be very glad they paid all that money to get the MLB postseason for at least this one game. They'll be able to sell advertising advertising for huge dollars. It's must-watch TV for the country in a way that the Super Bowl tends to be. I would think we'll see a lot of enormous ratings tonight.
See if we can get 50 million people to watch this. That hasn't happened, I believe, since '91, Game 7, the Braves and the Twins. It just shows what the strike did.
Best game I've ever seen. The best game.
Yep.
I mean, the without a doubt, the best baseball game I've ever seen. That was intense.
That's John Smoltz said that too. I interviewed him. He started that game. That was something. Jack Morris and John Smoltz.
Nothing into the 10th.
Ooh, very good. Yes. Up next, we continue with Big Game Breakdown. The Thunder and the Clippers. We got NFL, the Thursday night game with the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and we'll get to UCLA and Colorado, and we'll get to that deep dive with the NBA coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Pauly and Teddy. Big Game Breakdown. As always, liveoddssportsbookreview.com as we roll on here. NBA, the Thunder hit the road to take on the Clippers. Clippers 6, 207.5 the total. On paper, great matchup here at ego battles. You got CP3 against Westbrook, and you got Jordan against Adams inside. OKC number 2 in defensive efficiency. LA number 3, Teddy. But can OKC bring it here? Or are they looking forward to that kind of what I want to say revenge? But it's Westbrook against Durant coming up Thursday in Golden State.
Yeah, well, it's revenge, too, against the Warriors. Remember, those two teams met in a pretty historic playoff series as well. I worry about the spot a lot for the Thunder tonight. When you have that type of a look ahead, Westbrook versus old buddy, and there's been so many quotes about Westbrook and Durant and what they're saying about each other, and, Durant being a little bit nicer to Westbrook than Westbrook's been to his old teammate. But there's a lot to that game on Thursday, which means that this game at LA, it brings with it a little bit of a red flag, or a little bit of an asterisk for the OKC side. That, to me, a legitimate concern. And I think it also speaks to why this number is as high as it is. My powering number has this matchup a little bit shorter. But, of course, I've had OKC power rated a little bit higher than the markets from day one this season. And I don't disagree with that assessment. We saw the other night what they're capable of when they it's the Lakers. But they finally played a full game and dismantled LA.
How about the battle on the glass? We talked about it all the time last year. OKC was one of the best ever on the glass. What do you think of Jordan against Adams?
Well, last year they were one of the best rebounding teams in NBA history. They got 54.7% of all available rebounds. So far this season, 54.9%. Now, again, it's real early. It only rates number 3. But as the other teams balance out, the Thunder are going to continue to be an elite rebounding team. But, of course, they're going up against one of the best rebounders in the NBA in DeAndre Jordan. Hard game for me. I'm not going to get involved, Pauly. The price is a little bit rich to back LA. And for the OKC side, I do worry about that look ahead towards tomorrow night's matchup with the Warriors.
Yep, bad spot. No doubt about that. NFL now. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Falcons and the Buccaneers. Atlanta 3.5, 51 the total. And this is a tough spot, Teddy, for the home team, believe it or not, because they just had 5 quarters, that crazy overtime game where the defense was on the field for a ton of plays against the Raiders.
Yeah, there's a lot not to like about Tampa for a Thursday night game. Of course, it's a struggling defense. Bucs defense that was on the field for 85 snaps in that overtime game. They allowed 626 yards versus the Oakland Raiders. And oh, by the way, now you're facing an offense that may be a little bit better than the Oakland Raiders, because it's not just Matt Ryan or Julio Jones anymore. Jones was hurt for a good section of that Green Bay win. So what did Ryan do? He found Mohamed Sanu for 9 receptions, including a touchdown. They didn't have Tevin Coleman in that game. Didn't matter. They were able to get Freeman going. Atlanta leads the NFL in yards per play at 6.8. And no one else in the entire NFL is better than 6.2. And remember, they're sitting at 6.8 despite the fact they had road games at Denver and at Seattle, arguably 2 of the 3 best defenses in the NFL. So Tampa's defense, from a fatigue standpoint and from a how do we guard up against these elite opponents standpoint, it might be problematic for the Bucs on Thursday night.
Can they score? Can they score enough to hang around? Very disappointed in Winston's play since week 1 when he lit up Atlanta, although he's had a ton of injuries, doesn't recognize the guys he's throwing to. Jackson's is out, Doug Martin's out, Sims is out. They lost Quiz Rogers, got a sprained foot against the Raiders, had to play the last 3 series without him. All they needed was a field goal on any of those drives, and they couldn't do it, not to mention Aguayo missed another extra point.
Well, yeah, and it's worth noting exactly what happened on those last 3 drives. Once Quiz Rogers got hurt, all right, a team that, where I've been a Jameis Winston supporter. Winston has not looked good this year, and I think a lot of it is that he doesn't have a lot of good bodies to throw to with Jackson hurt and all the running back injuries. They have not been able to run the football. But all they needed on any of their last 3 drives against Oakland was a field goal to win. So what happened? 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Only 16 yards gained on those 9 snaps. No wonder the defense was gassed, although Atlanta's defense, not necessarily, the Raiders defense isn't great either, but the Falcons defense has been their bugaboo when it comes to covering point spreads so far this season.
All right, this is also Thursday night on Fox Sports 1, college football now. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Colorado at home against UCLA. Colorado's 11.5, 57.5 the total. Faithful takes over now the rest of the season. Rosen is out with the shoulder injury. Faithful's played the last couple games, more on that coming out. But no doubt, Teddy, Coach of the Year in college football, McIntyre, who's getting it done, turning around that program, and he's killing it ATS.
Yeah, the season before he arrived, Colorado was 1-11 straight up. Now the seniors from his first recruiting class, they're 6-2. They're going to be favored in every single remaining game. The college football playoff rankings came out yesterday. Colorado ranked 15th in the committee ratings. If they win out and Washington makes the playoffs, the Colorado Buffaloes, a team that was 1-11 4 years ago, could be in the Rose Bowl come January 1st. They played 2 Pac-12 home games so far. They beat Oregon State 47-6, and they beat Arizona State 40-16. McIntyre's quote, "We're in the heavyweight battles, which is what we want it to be in. We're there now, so now we have to go perform in the heavyweight fights. The kids are excited about. I'm excited about it, and now we have to go do it."
Yes. So we mentioned the change of quarterback now. Rosen likely done for the year. Faithful takes over. He was awful in his first game, deer in the headlights against Arizona State. He was 3 of 11 with 2 interceptions. Since then, pretty good. Remember, he lit up Utah. 64 for 110, 722 yards, 8 touchdowns, but 6 more interceptions. Problem is they can't get the running game going, and I'm sticking you with those names.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Jamambo, Olaronfomi, and Starks, 3.9, 3.4, 2.7 yards per carry. And when you have an inexperienced quarterback going on the road against a good defense, he doesn't have a good running game to help him out, and it's a November game up in Boulder for a bunch of LA kids, yeah, this is, in my mind, a problematic matchup. And I don't know if UCLA has a lot of confidence in Faithful. I mean, this is a 3-5 team right now. They're a long shot to even make a bowl. And Jim Mora, I mean, he's doing his best. He's, the coach speak. I've been around teams that when it's not going well and when they've lost a couple games, you get down 14-0, the tent just collapses. We don't do that. They haven't done it yet. But a trip to Boulder in November is not what this team needs now. We'll get back to this game when it comes to play of the day.
Up next, the deep dive. NBA Betting 101. Streaks and spots. That's coming up. And the play of the day, as you mentioned, on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping it up on SportsBit, Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Teddy, we do this with every sport. Why not the NBA? NBA Betting 101, streaks and spots. Let's get into it. Take it away. Let's start with spots, and you have a lot of back-to-backs in the NBA.
Sure. And when we talk about NBA Handicapping 101, this right here is a segment for those who are just starting to get into NBA, the type of things that the markets react to and that I personally react to. This is not a broad overview on how everybody beats the NBA. This is what I look at in the NBA, and it tends to work fairly well over the course of time. So let's start with spots. Now, what are bad spots in the NBA? Teams that you don't want. We talked about earlier in the show where the Kings were in a really tough spot, playing 5-7, second set of back-to-backs on the road. In general, back-to-backs with travel, especially as the season progresses, that's a bad spot. 3 games in 4 nights, that's a bad spot with tired legs. 4 games in 5 nights, a bad spot. Teams satisfied off a win prior to a back-to-back situation. Teams off overtime games. These are all spots that the markets don't always adjust for enough. Scheduling matters a lot in the NBA, but the power ratings are going to keep chunking out the same numbers on these teams. And when you look at the spots and the situations, you can often find edges.
How about streaks here with totals and under the radar guys who get hurt, role players?
Oh, I mean, streaks, in my mind, it's the key factor for betting and beating the NBA. I mean, especially with a coaching change. You talk about those totals, you'll see a team change their philosophy, and you're going to have a half season's worth of data. Say they're an up-tempo team, and the new coach comes in and says defense. The markets can take some time to adjust in that regard. And the under the radar, the role player injuries or return to health, they're so key. Remember Toronto last year when Damari Carroll got hurt? And Damari Carroll, no big deal. He's not one of their stars. He's not Lowry. He's not DeRozan. And Carroll, of course, was their defensive stopper. They couldn't get stops. All of a sudden, the Raptor games are flying over the total, and they're not covering numbers. So the under-the-radar role player injuries are key. The markets are going to adjust power ratings very slowly after the first month or so. Undervalued commodities can remain undervalued for weeks on end, and even great teams. Look at the Warriors coming out of the gate last year. They went 13-5 ATS their first 18 games, just crushing teams, covering double-digit spreads consistently, and the markets, they're ratcheting up a little. You can take advantage when a team's playing up here and the markets are making adjustments down here. You know, in the NFL, if you miss a team in a spot, it's gone. You can't chase. In the NBA, when a team isn't being valued correctly, you can miss one and still cash in on the general trend, and ride some of these streaks.
Okay, so you say the markets are slow to adjust, but here you adjust your power ratings every single night?
Every night. And I'm not talking about massive adjustments. I'm talking about half point. But every single night, I go through my NBA power ratings, I go through the box scores, and that's how you can take advantage of these shorter-term streaks. When a team is stepping up or they're playing poorly, the markets don't make any short-term adjustments. Once you get about December 1st, these are the power ratings, and they'll slowly move, glacially move. But if you're making, hey, this team's playing better. Hey, this team's on a nice little run right now. You can ride these streaks for a week or two and make money betting on or against squads that aren't playing with their current form at the same level they played throughout the course of the entire season.
Okay. And I have to know my coaches. How important is that? What does that mean?
Well, I want to talk about star players first, because the markets always overreact to star players, especially one-game star player injuries. But sometimes a guy gets hurt. Remember last year, Blake Griffin got hurt, and the Clips are devalued. The Clips aren't going anywhere. They won a huge spread run in his absence initially. In particular, though, they overadjust to those one-game absences, and when you have a guy getting hurt, everybody else steps up. Oh, guess what? We don't have LeBron today, the rest of the Cavs are going to step up and play. We don't have Curry today, the rest of the Warriors are going to step up and play. You can make a living just betting against the market moves after NBA injury info is announced. They always overreact. At least it tends to be that way.
Okay, now to the coaches. How important? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, with coaches, it only comes with experience. But the more you watch NBA, the more you read NBA, the more you get to know your coaches and how they're going to perform in different roles. Popovich, a master at coaxing strong efforts out of his team when star players are sitting. Mike D'Antoni doesn't know a thing about getting a stop during crunch time. Never has. Tom Thibodeau's teams are really tough off a loss, etc., etc., etc. And especially when it comes to derivative betting, first quarter, first half. If you know your coaches, you can clean up with those derivatives because the markets they're just an auto road. Here's what the game spread is, therefore here's what the half spread is, therefore here's what the quarter spread is. And knowing your coaches and knowing their MOs with first quarters and first halves, those derivative markets, man, they can be legitimate money makers, but that's only going to come with experience.
All right, we saved the best for last. What's your number one strategy?
Well, my number one strategy in the NBA is to identify what I consider to be mispriced teams. And you bet on or against those teams for an extended stretch. I usually use five game increments, but sometimes I'll go 5 games and 5 more and 5 more and 5 more. If the value is still there, the bet on or bet against can continue indefinitely. Remember Atlanta 2 years ago, that 20-1 point spread run from about mid-December through the end of January where, oh, the Hawks aren't that good. Yes, they are. And the markets are adjusting up incremental. I'm like, no, Atlanta's right here, right now. That was a real profit maker. And their only TV game during that span was a 30-point loss. The smaller market, under-the-radar teams without superstars, those are the ones who hold their value. Look back at last year. Was Orlando anything special last year? They were not. Okay? They had 2 separate 7-0 ATS runs in the first 6 weeks of the season. They went 21-8 ATS through Christmas. Why? They were a small market, under-the-radar team that no one was paying any attention to, and they were playing a little bit better than the markets thought they were. That was it. You find teams like Atlanta 2 years ago or Orlando last year, you ride them indefinitely until they start to lose ATS. Those are teams you can make real money with. That's my number one strategy. Find the mispriced teams and ride them, whether you're betting on them or betting against them.
There you go. Excellent advice. Great job, Teddy.
Thank you.
You take away, well, I've given out 2 losers in a row, so the streak's over. 19-7 run now. Ball State and the Indians, obviously not even close. 27-11-1 on the football season. Back to football. Where are we going? What are we doing, Teddy?
We talked a little bit about the Colorado Buffaloes earlier in the show in their game against the UCLA on Thursday night. Let's go to Colorado. Game number 316, the Buffs minus 11.5. You can still find that out there. I think we will see a little Colorado money, so this might be a game to bet sooner rather than later. But I am a believer in Colorado, and I'm not convinced that UCLA is going to be ready to go in Boulder on a Thursday night with a backup quarterback and no running game. Statement game for the home team. Buffs minus 11.5. That's our play of the day.
Well done, sir. Excellent show. A lot of fun. We're back tomorrow to recap Game 7 of the World Series. We have the Thunder in Golden State. We got a lot of football games to go over. We'll touch on the key games in college football. We'll talk to you Thursday on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.